When we think about what makes One Piece great, a lot of things comes to mind. But I think the appeal of One Piece comes mostly from its spirit of adventure. And Skypeia Arc was one of those arcs that truly showed us that, which is why I was very surprised how Skypeia Arc is rated so poorly by most people. And what I heard from those people were things like it was too long, boring, unrelated, and unimportant. Overall, it was like a side quest, a story contained in its own bubble. Skypeia is the only arc that was treated like a filler when it isn't actually a filler, but more people are now changing their mind. Because more the story progresses, the Skypeia arc is aging like a fine wine. Now it's tastier than ever. Looking at the current state of the story, given how much time has passed since Skypeia Arc was first aired, and given how much has been revealed since then, we now know that Skypeia Arc was packed with important hidden clues and foreshadowing. But fortunately, after Luffy's Nika transformation, people started to connect the dots that there were so many hints of Nika in this arc. Only then people started giving attention. But I want to proudly say I liked Skypeia Arc even before all this. It's been always special to me. Everything in this arc was so interesting. All the stories, the Shandians, Noland, Enel as a villain, the world building, and pretty much everything. Now in this video, I'm gonna cover everything that made this arc great, covering all the hidden clues, foreshadowing, and good parts. Just to clarify, this video is mostly on Skypeia Arc on its own, not the entire Skypeia saga. Although I did reference some of the important scenes from Jaya Arc, but overall, that's not the focus. I'm planning to make a separate video on Jaya Arc. Now, spoiler alert for people who haven't watched this arc yet, so I would suggest you to watch this video after you've watched it yourself. For those who've watched it already, hopefully at the end of this video, I'll successfully persuade you that this arc was actually great. Now, without further ado, let's get to the video. Skypeia was the first arc to really expand the world of One Piece. At the very early stage of One Piece, we had pretty good grasp of what entire Earth of One Piece looked like. One Piece world is just one big ocean and it's divided into 4 seas: East Blue, West Blue, South Blue, and North Blue. This division is formed by 2 lines encircling the entire ocean horizontally and vertically: Red Line and Grand Line. Red Line is a landmass above sea level that Marijua is located on top of, and it wraps the Earth vertically. The Grand Line is a strip of sea that wraps the Earth horizontally. And Luffy's goal is to get to the final island in Grand Line, Laugh-Tale. That's what we knew. Then Skypeia Arc introduced, hey, there's another world up in the sky. When Straw Hats first landed in White Sea, which is the lower part of the Skypeia, they immediately noticed this is a whole new world and they shouldn't expect common sense from there on. Not that they ever expected common sense the moment they entered Grand Line, but this was a whole new world. And when they finally got up to the Skypeia Island, they didn't just see a bunch of human beings that were living on top of the clouds. Oda did his due diligence on building the world of Sky Islands. Those humans, the residents, not only they had these cute little wings and 2 antennas, but they had their own civilization and they were living self-sufficiently on top of the clouds. Oda even went levels further in world building that he created their own currency, which is called Extol, and 10,000 Extol is worth 1 berry. Next up is the power system and fights. This is one of the good parts of this arc. This is probably unpopular opinion, but I think Skypeia had one of the best technical fights. Don't underestimate Sky Battle is what they say, because it's different from Blue Sea fights where we have Devil Fruit users, pistols, cannons, Haki. Although it's worth mentioning that this arc was before introduction of Haki. And most of the fights in Blue Sea happens on the ground, exception to Moonwalk users and Flying Zones. But Sky Battles are slightly different because they are 3-dimensional. It can happen on air and on the ground or both, but mostly air. They have tools that enables them to freely fly around and have complete air mobility. They have this ice skate looking thing which is called the shooter. It has what's called breath dial. I'll explain what dial is in a bit. Mounted on the middle of each side, serving as a propulsion device. With the help of this, they are able to move freely on sea clouds. Sea clouds are little paths that they can create anywhere they want. And just like ice skating, they are able to skate on top of those clouds. And the slick thing is not only on the cloud paths, but shooters allow users to glide on top of tree branches, even on the ground or on the other surfaces. And shooter can also enhance your kicks, your punches, and it lets you do air dash in midair. Every fighter in Skypeia Arc except Enel and Straw Hats, they didn't have Devil Fruit. They had tools and weapons. They have these seashells called dials, which is the most valuable object in Sky Islands, and this keeps the civilization going. It can be used for day-to-day needs such as transportation, electricity, lights, and it can be also used for combat. So depending on how smart and creative you use, it can be very useful and extremely deadly. I really want to call out the Shandians and the 4 priests. They showed some really creative uses of dials for combat. Especially the Shandians. They didn't have mantra, which is the observation haki in Sky Island lingo. They only relied on dials and weapons and wit. Against guys who use the same weapons and plus had mantra, they did so well against them. That's why their battles were really interesting to me. They clearly had major disadvantage in this 3-way war, but they made up for it with their mastery of their weapons, smartness, and grit. So I'll pick some fights as an example to break down all the technical aspects of their fighting styles. Let's take for example how Viper took out one of the priests of Enel, Ashura. When the Straw Hats came to Skypeia, the Shandians decided to take this chance to take down Enel. But before they reached to Enel, they had to take down the 4 priests. And the first priest they took down was Ashura. He's the guy that took down Ganval, the former god of Skypeia, and is a user of mantra. The Shandians, even if they had number advantage, they were outclassed. Ashura rides a giant bird and uses a flame javelin. The javelin is able to ignite because he placed a flame dial inside the tip of the javelin. This is one of the creative uses of dials for combat. So Ashura is an air fighter, which Shandians have no problem against because they have shooters. But the problem was the mantra. With mantra, Ashura was able to easily counter every attack that Shandians were trying to land. By observing this clear disadvantage they have, the Shandian warriors leader Viper was smart enough to understand they have no chance against Ashura fighting head-on. So he decides to use his trump card, the reject dial. But first he had to immobilize Ashura in order to do that. So he tanks one of his flame javelin attack, takes it to his shoulder, and grabs hold of Ashura. This caught Ashura a bit off guard because he wasn't expecting this. Then he uses reject dial to take out Ashura. There is impact dial, which is type of dial that can store a shockwave. By pushing the button, you can then release the shockwave, but it's not enough to fully unalive your opponent. However, the reject dial that Viper used here is 10 times stronger, and it comes with a cost. You almost get half the damage that your opponent will get. This move is like a queen sacrifice in chess. Crazy, reckless, desperate, but when done right and the timing is good, it's lethal. Which is why I absolutely love this scene. Viper was the ultimate badass here. I think Viper is the only character that outshone Zoro when it comes to badassery in this arc. Next fight I want to pick is Luffy versus Viper. Yeah, I know it's Viper again, but what can I say? This guy really showed some really good fights. Just by watching the whole fight between the two, you'll see how much Viper is thinking while they're fighting. He uses his shooter to glide on top of tree branches, which gives him extra mobility because he's not bound to ground only. And his main offensive weapon is his bazooka that he is carrying on his shoulder. He would either counterattack or wait for the right moment to fire back at Luffy. In this scene, he even uses his shield to protect against Luffy's attack. Although Luffy broke through it, it still minimized the damage. So as you can see, a lot is going on here. I don't know about you, but I love it when fighting involves range of different weapons. It makes things interesting. And next fight is the fight between Zoro versus Bram. Bram is one of the top fighters of Shandian warriors. He is a long-range fighter. He uses pistols plus the shooter for extra mobility on air and ground. His pistols release a light bright enough to blind your opponent's eyes. The light is released right before the shot is fired, so it's nice combination attack. Long-range fighter was a tough match for Zoro. Even though he is technically physically stronger than his opponent, the matchup was a bit tricky for Zoro because he couldn't do flying slashes at the time. So he was 100% close-range fighter. But this fight worked as a mini quest for Zoro to unlock his flying slashes. The fight wasn't going anywhere. Bram was keeping his distance tactically and Zoro trying to close the distance but couldn't. Then Zoro decides to try flying slash for the first time. It worked and he was able to hit Bram, but if Zoro didn't need long range attacks here, I'm sure Zoro would have unlocked it way later. Okay, lastly, as an honorable mention, the priest Gedatsu used jet dials, which blows out powerful bursts of air. He wore jet dials on his elbows and on his heels, which enabled him to punch with superhuman speed and power. And also, it allowed him to be mobile mid-air. And there are many more examples I'd like to go over, but I'll stop right here. Next, let's go over the Nika foreshadowing. Like I said before, this arc was packed with important informations and foreshadowings, most of what we never noticed until Wano, and we're still noticing new things from this arc. One of the biggest foreshadowing was, of course, the existence of sun god Nika. There were so many hints, and I'll go over all the Nika foreshadowing that were shown in Skypeia Arc that we know so far. First, the bonfire scene. Everything about the scene is so random and casual. That's why, all the crazy foreshadowing aside, I always loved this scene. Straw Hats were taking a little break from all the restless battles and pursuits that's been happening since they landed on Skypeia. So they settled down somewhere in the Upper Yards Forest, which is the piece of land that came from Earth, and they were going to take a rest quietly, but Luffy and Usopp insisted on having a bonfire, even though it's bad because smoke will tell their location to their enemies, but they didn't care. And they were greeted with these white wolves, and they were noise complaining. Nami just goes there and beats the shit out of the alpha wolf, and they decide to join the bonfire. The bonfire starts, and look at this dance they're doing. It's literally the Nika dance. It's crazy. And we never noticed that, of course. And they are dancing around the fire, which could be symbolizing that they're worshipping the sun god. And everyone is joyful. Okay, next scene is probably lesser known foreshadowing. It's when Luffy finally beats Enel. So before we start, let me give you a little memory refresher, and this will give you enough context. Enel is about to unleash his biggest attack. By using his electricity, he gathered this huge black cloud. Everyone was losing hope and they were saying their final prayers. Luffy, throwing his last-ditch effort, jumps into this accumulation of huge black cloud of lightning. He had his right hand stuck in a golden bowl, and this was actually a blessing in disguise, because gold is an excellent electrical conductor. This is why Enel's ship uses a lot of gold to operate. So Luffy goes crazy inside this accumulated cloud, and dark sky finally clears. He was able to neutralize Enel's biggest attack, and now I want you to pay attention to this scene. The god of liberation liberates people from this nightmare. Sun starts to shine bright and everyone's bewildered. It's like people's prayers are being answered by the god. I mean, look at this. If this is not foreshadowing, I don't know what. And we're not done yet. Enel is still there, and Luffy does one of his most satisfying gum rifle. He hits Enel along with the bell. Bam! It's like he declares Enel's defeat through the entire sky. And by the way, sound of bell symbolizes liberation and coming of a change. And look at Luffy's pose here after beating Enel. What does it look like? Of course, his Nika pose. Next scene is the night after Enel's defeat. Everyone is basically having an after party, and we hear this interesting drum beat. What does it sound like? Of course, the drums of liberation. We wouldn't have known it back then. We thought it was just a tribal drum Shandians were playing. But now we know everybody is celebrating their liberation. This scene is particularly beautiful. After defeating their common enemy, the Shandians, the Skypeians, and Blue Sea pirates, even animals, creatures, everyone, all united, rejoicing their victory. And the drum song keeps playing, and everyone's dancing. Okay, next let's talk about the revelation of Rio Poneglyph. Right before Straw Hats left Skypeia, Robin goes to read the poneglyph that's attached in the base of the golden belfry. For many years, Shandians have been the keepers of this poneglyph, and they were tasked to protect this at all costs until it fulfills its purpose. According to Robin, this poneglyph had the location of the ancient weapon Poseidon written on it, which now we know where it is, or should I say who it is. Robin didn't finish reading it because she was never interested in learning about weapons. Her interest was always in knowing the true history of the world. But then there was another text written with the same characters as the poneglyph. Not on the poneglyph itself, but right next to it on a gold. And this was from Roger. It said, "I made it here. I will guide this text to the farthest ends of the earth." And now from Wano Arc, we now know this was written by Odin. When Roger came to Skypeia, Odin was part of his crew. Odin knows the ancient characters because he inherited the knowledge from his clan. Then upon reading the text from Roger, Robin connected the dots and she realizes the existence of Rio Poneglyph. Because what Roger is implying here is when he said he will guide this text, he's saying he will carry this information from this specific poneglyph all the way to the Laftel. Based on this, Robin reasoned that if you gather and connect all the poneglyphs containing historical information, it would form one big text that tells the true history of the world, and that's called Rio Poneglyph, and the name literally means the true text of history. Next, effective use of mystery and unknown. At the start of the video, I said this arc really gave us the spirit of adventure, and part of the reason was because of the way everything was set up in Skypeia Arc. Skypeia Arc was the arc prior to Skypeia, and both actually are in the same saga. In case you didn't know how it works, there are arcs within a saga. Skypeia Arc was set up with very effective spirit of mystery and unknown, and I'll explain what I mean by that. So in Skypeia Arc, the first clue of the possible existence of an island in the sky was given when a huge galleon ship fell from the sky where Straw Hats were sailing. What a way to start a new arc. This scene really excited me. I know One Piece world is full of crazy physics and anything is possible, but that anything still had limitation in our mind. But an island on a sky, that was totally unexpected. Okay, then Straw Hats decided to dive underwater to examine the sunken galleon ship. And of course, all of this helped to add up to this one big mystery. There's an island in the sky. At this point, we were given a clue and now we're expectant, curious onto what's to come next. Because we've never seen anything like this in One Piece. Then my absolutely favorite scene, the appearance of the sea behemoths. This was terrifying when I first watched it. When Luffy is making this face, you know shit's scary. All of a sudden, in the middle of the day, in the middle of a sea, suddenly it gets dark and then these giant shadows appear. They're standing in the sea. Just think of the size of these things, if these things were real. But of course, it was revealed at the end of Skypeia. These sea behemoths were giant shadows of people that are standing on top of the cloud. But still, in my opinion, this scene really contributed to the mystery factor of Skypeia. And next, Mary's spirit. This scene was unsettling until we discovered that this ghostly entity was actually Mary's spirit materialized. But this was revealed after Skypeia Arc during the Water 7. Frankie explained it to Usopp, and it has a name. It's really hard to pronounce. It's Cloud Powder Man. Then the existence of a land in Skypeia. From the moment Straw Hats landed in Skypeia, everything was made of clouds. But then this piece of land called Upper Yard was shown, and later it turned out to be the work of Knock-Up Stream. It's powerful enough to knock up half of an island, so this piece of land was part of Jaya Island. By attaching the Upper Yard to Jaya's map, it forms complete skull. And again, I'm mentioning all these scenes because these are deliberate setups by Oda. He's piquing interest. And this is what made this arc so mysterious and otherworldly. And next great thing about this arc was the villain, Enel. His four priests were a bit underwhelming, to be honest, but I guess it helped to focus more on Enel himself. I really liked his overall design. He's pretty well written. In a way, he's like Luffy. He's got a big ambition. He's got one of the strongest devil fruits in One Piece world. The man is literally a walking natural disaster. Because he thinks he's a god, he has a religious way of punishing whoever defies his orders. He sent this giant crab to pick up Straw Hats, but it was only Zoro, Robin, Nami, and Chopper. Then they are brought to this sacrificial altar in the middle of the Upper Yard forest, and rest of the Straw Hats, Luffy, Sanji, and Usopp goes after their friends, and they had to go through these ordeals. And this is one of my favorite parts as well. This whole adventure of the trio felt like a game. So there were these 4 ordeals, and for each ordeal there's one of Enel's 4 priests waiting. By dumb luck, the trio chooses the easiest ordeal. Okay, back to Enel. The reason I brought this part up was because it shows how convinced he is that he is a god. And through rituals, ordeals, he's trying to act like a god. Attaining his devil fruit power and mastering mantra, he got drunk with his power. And as a result, he even destroyed his birth island, Burka. Burka is a sky island just like Skypeia. He has what's called God complex. His ego is bigger than Zunisha. All his goals stems from this belief that he is the only god of this world. He believed only God should be allowed to exist in heaven, and that's actually why he destroyed Burka, and that's why he was also trying to take down Skypeia. His other goal was to go to the fairy Verth, which is, in his language, he's referring to moon. That's why he needed a lot of gold, which Shandoran runes provided. That's why he exploited hundreds of Skypeians to help him build Arc Maxime. Then when he got what he wanted, he was about to cut loose. But rival god, if you will, Luffy, the sun god Nika, interfered. At the end of the arc, he was beaten by Luffy, but he survived and his Arc Maxime was still running. So he continued to head to the moon. Well, guess what? Sky isn't the limit. There is a civilization on the moon. So there's a more dimension now. Skypeia Arc introduced 2 different new worlds, Sky Islands and Moon. We got more details on Moon in one of One Piece cover stories called Enel's Great Space Operations. Enel landed on the moon. He then finds this little creature wearing soldier's uniform laying down unconscious. He zaps it with his electricity and it comes to life. Or should I say, it started running. Because it turns out it's a mechanical life form. It's a robot called Automata, and they're from Earth. They were built by this genius scientist, the name is Tsukimi, from Karakuri Island, which is the birthplace of Vegapunk. This robot and 3 of his friends came to Moon to avenge his creator. One peaceful night, they were watching Moon while eating. But then something exploded on the moon. This startled the doctor to choke on his food and he died. So that's their motive. I guess motive is a motive. So they flew to the moon using these balloons. They must be one heck of a balloon. And they finally arrived at the moon and they challenged the space pirates, but they were too strong to handle and they lost. These space pirates were still at the moon excavating at the time of Enel's arrival, and this pissed off Enel, so he went to their base and beaten every single one of them quite easily. After defeating the space pirates, Enel goes to check the cave formed from the excavation. Then he finds an ancient city. This city looked more developed than Chandra. Enel was able to recharge the entire city along with hundreds of automatas using his Goro Goro no Mi. Then he sees this ancient wall painting, which the entire context is still unknown, but one thing it revealed was the Skypeians, Shandians, and Burkans, the Enel's ancestors, all originated from this moon city, and they invented these robots called automatas. But they ended up migrating down to Earth because they used up all their resources, but they left everything here. Another detail to see is that if you've noticed, these automatas have little wings just like Skypeians and Shandians, indicating it was made by them. After seeing Enel beat their sworn enemy, they pledged loyalty to Enel. Enel didn't really like the idea of being the leader of annoying little robots, but after reaching his goal, the moon, he wasn't gonna complain about anything. So as of the last page in this cover story, he was seen with a grin on his face, surrounded with his newly found allies. I wasn't sure if Enel will come back since he fulfilled his goal, and it felt like there isn't more for him in the story. But this mural in Elbaf showed Arc Maxime and lightning is coming down from it. This convinced me that Enel will definitely come back and he's one of the players in the final game. Skypeia had one of the most unforgettable funny scenes that even Skypeia skippers love. Zoro's beef with Southbird, Zoro's call for bravery, Luffy imitating Sanji and getting beat up by Sanji, Usopp's spell, and Luffy's iconic singing scene was in this arc. He got separated from the rest of the crew, and in the forest, with enemies roaming around, he's just chilling and singing. Usopp diving down the White Sea to almost fall down to Earth, and many more. Okay, just to wrap up the video, having all these great things in this arc, I was very surprised why people didn't appreciate, why people didn't enjoy. So hopefully now, change your mind. Thank you for watching, see you on the next video.